Hey everyone, we're back for our green couch chats. We're so excited. And today we have a really very exciting topic, I think. Every topic I think is exciting because we just are really into this, but maybe that's just our nerdy selves. Today we're going to talk a little bit about getting to know your body and all the different phases that it goes through, which is a pretty awesome thing to know about.
Absolutely. I think part of getting kind of the preferences that you have met and even knowing what your preferences are kind of like tuning into your body first and kind of knowing what you need. And so I think this all starts in pregnancy. I mean, there's so many changes that happen in pregnancy. And if this is your first journey, it can feel kind of out of sorts, right? There's a lot of shifts and changes that happen both physically and emotionally, spiritually, role shifting, so many shifts. We don't do a lot of talking about it, right? In the prenatal or in the conventional prenatal world, we focus a lot on the numbers, on like the measurements, how much weight are you gaining, how big is your belly, you know, how are all those little parts in there looking on ultrasound. But not like, how are you doing and how are these shifts affecting you? And so I think we wanted to talk a lot about kind of exploring your own body and your own intuition in that sense, in trying to get to a place of knowing how you're going to kind of shift and change with this thing that is happening to you, right? And so in terms of the prenatal, like we can definitely talk about, I mean, I think some of the things feel really obvious, like body changes. Yeah. Your belly is going to get bigger.
What? Wait, hold on. This thing I didn't know. But I think also too, it's such a unique time, pregnancy, postpartum, all of it, in that it's maybe the first time that you've ever had your body shift and you didn't have a ton of control over that shifting, which is a pretty big shift to make in your brain, right? So your body is changing and you're kind of a witness rather than being necessarily a super active participant in every single part of it.
Absolutely.
And you should be an active participant, but it's a really different way that it changes than like other times in your life.
Absolutely.
It is a little akin actually to puberty, where you're like, I guess things are growing.
Oh my gosh.
I keep waiting for mine to grow more and they haven't yet. I'm just like, I'm sure they're gonna, I keep waiting, but I don't know, we'll see. Maybe 45 will bring me my huge breath that I wanted forever. Anyways, just kidding, kind of, not really, not much.
No.
Yeah, I'd love to have
That's why I liked nursing so much.
I know, me too.
Jeez, I'm like, woo!
3 months, I was like, this is what I'm talking about. Anyways, we've kind of done, but yeah, actually owning that new body. But the point is like part of this mental switch is this idea of like, whoa, I kind of don't have a ton of control over it. How do I let go control and also be active in this transformation? Like, how do I do both?
Right. And I think that the big thing is, and this is so much of like what I hear first-time parents, especially coming into private midwifery care, articulating, is that they come to these kind of more private relationships, these relationship-based care models in order to like exert more control. Yeah. And I think we really need to reframe that. There is control in that sense. Like if I just know enough, then I can control how this goes. Yeah. That's not exactly how that works. However, I don't actually use those words to disempower anyone. I think it's a little different here. You know, when we have preferences, when we know where our choice points are, then we can stand up in our agency and our autonomy, right? And in that way, exert some control over what we're looking for. But it's different than saying like, if I know that there are options for epidural or not epidural, then I will definitely not do the epidural if that's your preference, right? Yeah. Things come up. We don't know how this journey unfolds, right? But what you do have in this space of choosing to work with a private midwife and having that relationship-based care and having those opportunities to have more meaningful conversations around choice points and how your body is changing, what those changes mean, right? Is that you get a voice in the conversation, right? So, you know, when choices come up, you can hear them as choices rather than, you know, those loose informed consent conversations that we often have, especially in the birth room. I'm just going to check you now. That's not an informed choice, right?
Totally.
And so when we have these discussions, and I know that that's a little bit pivoting away from how the body changes, but a lot of this is all baked in the cake together, right? Like once we start to have more voice, more agency, then we do get control. It's just a different metric. It's about how we respond. It's how we meet those choices rather than whether or not those choices come up. Totally. I think that's really where that difference lies.
Yeah. Well, it's also just so much prep for parenting, right?
Absolutely.
It's not like you're like, okay, I'm going to have a cool ass kid. Like that kid is going to be so amazing. And maybe your kid is on some level, but I've got 3 and all 3 are totally different. And I literally raise them the same. 2 of them are twins. Like I actually really raise them the same. Like nurse them the same time, change them the same time. Yeah. They could not be more different. And I think that made me feel so much better as a parent, and also really kind of drove in this idea of like, oh yeah, like control is a little bit of a construct, or that we've like tried to put on things like, oh yeah, I've got this. But actually like really being able to feel into the like, okay, this is happening. How do I respond? My belly's getting bigger and I'm starting to notice this hip is feeling a little, how do I could either sit here and be like sad about it. I could like really try to do a bunch of things, or I could like explore something. Like I have a variety of ways that I can choose to respond to the different changes. And I think that's really the key of like getting into like what you're saying, like midwifery care, where you're like, can we sit and talk for like 45 minutes about the changes in my body? And like, yes, absolutely. Let's do that, because it's important, because it doesn't just mean like you're talking about this one little thing. Like, oh yeah, like I just noticed like I can't get my jeans over my thighs in the same way that I used to. But what is that actually meaning to you? What does that feel like for you? And then how do you respond to that? So I think there's so many layers. It's not just about your body changing. It's about you changing.
Absolutely. And in that same kind of line of thought, I really like to give space to layer on permission to change your mind, right? So many of the times when we enter into this journey, if we've seen someone's journey go maybe differently than how we would have wanted it for ourselves, we kind of like think, oh, if I just do this, this, and this, then I'll end up with a different story, or that's not how I would do it. This is how I would do it. And you know what? Like as those days unfold, as the shifts change, as the body tells us different things in different pregnancy journeys, right? Like I'll just asterisk this by saying, I didn't have any kind of nausea and vomiting with my first 2 kids. And I was like, oh, this pregnancy thing is like so easy. And then I had it with my 3rd and I was like, oh my God.
It's the worst.
Why are we doing this? Like, why do people have babies anymore, right? And so, you know, like it is okay in response to what your body is telling you, to what your mental health needs, to change your mind, right? It's okay. Give yourself permission, because you know what? Being a parent to a child is going to be so much easier if you give yourself permission to change your mind, right? This obstinance, this hanging on, you know, to really like, this is the vision that I had. That's what gives us a lot of like hard feelings on the other 100%. Side. It's like, this didn't go exactly how I planned. And if we can just let go and say the piece that I can own here is around like my own agency, my own voice in this experience. I cannot control the outside things. That is the piece that I have. That's the piece that I can cultivate. That's the piece that I can work on developing in midwifery care through nuanced conversations about what it means to you to be pregnant, to becoming a parent, right? I think
and to be really around important. Folks that support you changing your decision, 100%, right? There's none 100%. Of the like, there's no guilt, there's no expectations.
It's not punitive at all, right?
Exactly. It's like, great, I changed my mind and I feel great about it. And everyone around you is like, we're on board. Right. Which way are we going now?
Absolutely.
Great. And not beating yourself up about it either. I think that's a big one. Like, I feel like I've done a lot of that in parenting where I'm like, oh, I wanted to like fix them these amazing meals every day. And then I'm like, you know what, guys, I'm so sorry. We're going to have to like eat out again because I literally
It's mac and cheese, guys. It's mac and cheese and applesauce.
And you're like, this is what's happening. Right. And so it's like, sometimes you just have to be able to like, and also for your own self, you know, we've both had our like pregnancy and postpartum journeys. And I definitely worked through so much stuff through those. I think it made me a way better midwife, having to go through some hard things during those times. Cause I was like, oh, after I had my first, I was like, oh, all you have to do is like breathe out your baby, like it's whatever. And then after my twins, I was like, just kidding. Now I get a lot of these other things. And so I think also life experience teaches you that,
100%.
which is why it's important to pick people around you that are like, have either life experience or even just have the viewpoint that like, hey, things don't always go exactly the way they go. And like, there's no judgment on that.
Yeah. A
like,
deep well of empathy does not attach itself to whether or not you've had children before, right?
Exactly.
But you can feel that out. That is where your spidey senses, like, let's just start at the very first day you're working with a prenatal provider. If your spidey senses are going off, if you're feeling judgment, if you're feeling dismissal, get out. Get out and find somebody else, because that's not going to get better. That's not something that's going to improve, right? That is a tell right from the get-go, right? And that is toxic in so many ways. Because, you know, how I see it play out with clients that I work with is like, if you already have an inclination to people pleasing, which is pretty common in cisgendered women in our society, unfortunately, there's like, okay, you're telling me something about my body that I don't necessarily intuit, but like, yes, you're the professional, I'll defer to you. And like, that makes no sense. That makes no sense. And so the provider that you're working with, and how Serena and I engage with so many of our clients, is like, how do you feel about this?
Totally.
What is your sense, right? Because sometimes somebody will tell me something, I'm like, oh, that sounds like round ligament pain. And then when I dig into it a little bit deeper, they're like, that's not exactly what I'm feeling. I'm like, okay, well then tell me more about what you're feeling. Right? Until we can figure it out together.
I think most people know their bodies.
They like, do. If we give them the space and permission to have that knowledge, right? And I think that in the like allopathic world is oftentimes stripped from people. This is not the experience you're having. This is the experience you're having.
Yeah, it can happen for sure. And I think like, that's why pregnancy, postpartum is such a beautiful time to like actually create like really positive self-talk, right? Like really like, oh my gosh, I'm growing. This is so awesome. Look at this cute little stretch mark that came up. Like, I love this thing. Oh my gosh, this is like such an, like, I didn't know my body could expand in this way. And like really trying to cultivate that beautiful, positive self-talk. And like, how will that have ripples then as you go on to be a parent, right? You're like, I love this little stretch mark, and I love your little dimple, and I love, you know, and then they're gonna be like, I do too, you know? So I don't know. I think there's so many ripple effects that can come from just like learning to really be able to change with transformation, and also to be able to like, if you notice like, oh, I'm feeling stuck in these certain places. These are the places I'm feeling a little stuck. Like, I don't want to give up my independence. I don't want to, you know, give up the ideas I had around what my body looked like. I don't want to give up all these different things. Okay, let me pause for a second. Where is that coming from? That's a sticky point. I should maybe like, let's play with that a little bit. And we got like 10 months. I don't know why we always say 9 months. It's like such a weird thing. Anyways, let's just all be on board with that. Anyways, I've got like a minute to like sit with this, right? And if I'm not nauseous, if you're nauseous, I'm sorry, don't worry about it. Just sit in bed. It's okay. It's going to be fine. You're going to get through it. Like, and also, if you eat nothing but frozen waffles for your entire first trimester, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. It's going to be fine. My salt and lemon works every time, right? It's like the best thing ever. They paired it with tequila for a reason. Anyways, yes. So we talked a little bit about changes in pregnancy. So I thought I could talk a little bit about in postpartum. So in the same way that you kind of watch your body grow in pregnancy, which is incredible. And also our society's made it this like the full moon. And it's like, everyone's like, oh, your belly. And it's like this amazing, beautiful thing. That really shifts in postpartum. Like, very unfortunately in our society, the minute you give birth, all of a sudden your belly is not something to be like photographed and looked at. Like on my flyer for like postpartum prep class, I put a postpartum belly that's like wrinkled and someone's doing like the heart thing around it, right? And a couple people were like, I don't know, do you want that on your flyer? I'm like, yes. Like, yes. Are you kidding? Like, that belly is amazing. It's been through something. Like, I want to be around people that have been through something, right? So anyways, the point is that that's a big shift, because not only are you maybe having your own talk and dealing with your own transformation, you're also having to a little bit battle stuff we've been told in society and ideals that have been raised up in society that are not only unrealistic, but I think kind of detrimental to the mental health of a lot of people giving birth. So I always have people, I've noticed a couple things in the postpartum, which I hope that maybe this will be helpful for people as they navigate this time. One, I really noticed that people don't touch their bodies in the postpartum.
Oh my gosh.
Do you notice that?
Yes.
I noticed that a ton. And so I really encourage at visits, or even just like I talk to people about it, like, hey, when you are ready, and you have to be ready, like no one can tell you when it's time to touch your body. Like you touch it when you want to, right? But when you feel ready, create a little space for it. Like take a second, maybe like have someone hold the baby and like feel your belly. It feels different, right? You've been like maybe rubbing cocoa butter on your belly like this whole whatever, however many months. And now it feels really mushy, maybe it's a little slushy, feels like maybe there's some space in there, which there is, right? So take a second to like feel it. If you've had a C-section, I see this even more. I was talking to, right? Mm-hmm. I was talking to someone the other day. I went to her house and she was like, I don't know, maybe like 7 days, whatever. No, maybe it was a little bit longer. Yeah, maybe like 9 days or whatever. And I was like, how's it going? I went as and I realized, and I was like, you know what I feel like? It feels like you have one of those like black sensor bars, like, you know, those bars on TV where there's like, nothing's happening here in your body. Like this part exists and you're talking about it and you're feeling it and you're down to do like a little bit of like therapeutic breast chest massage and you're like down for me to rub your feet. But if I go anywhere here, you're like, oh, sorry, black bar. And so I really encourage people to like peel off that black bar as you're ready. Maybe it just means you look at it. Maybe you're not even ready to look at it. So maybe you close your eyes and you just feel around. Like go slow and be kind with yourself. You don't have to do anything, but being able to touch your body really gets you kind of into the changes in a really physical and real way that grounds you into like what's been happening.
Absolutely.
And all of those changes that you're feeling helps to make them feel more real. Otherwise it's just all in here and you're like, so many times I pull out mirrors and, you know, have people take a little look at what's happening. And sometimes people are like, no thanks or whatever. And that's fine. Like everyone do your thing. But I encourage, if you're ready, to look at it, because I would say like 9 times out of 10 people are like, that does not look as bad as I was thinking.
100%.
Right? Everyone's like, I thought that shit was all blown out. And you're like, no, not at all. Like it actually looks fine. Like it's a little swollen. Don't worry about it. So sometimes even just being able to touch, feel, see makes a huge difference in being able to conceptualize what's actually happening to my body. And I think we forget that because we live so in here, and especially as like technology is, everything is visual and everything is like up here and nothing is in our bodies. Like we forget about like, no, we actually have to touch it. We actually 100%. Have to be in it. So,
well, so much of this, especially for those belly births, right, is articulated to folks, even in like the way that they document it in medical records, as like a failed, failed vaginal birth. God. And they're like, oh man, or like if it's an attempt to have a vaginal birth after a prior C-section and they end up with a C-section again, that's a failed TOLAC. And I'm like,
verbiage ever.
Can we stop with this? Because actually people who have a belly birth, you're so intensely brave that you put your body on a surgical table to have your baby welcomed into the world, right? That is kind of the bravest, right? That is like a big gate that you had to cross through to get to the other side to meet your baby. And so that's kind of the way I look at it. And I think if we reframed it in that way, people could really see how much it took, right? Because I know I've talked to folks afterwards. It is scary to lay on your back on a surgical table with all these people like just shouting around you, right? In a cold environment. And like go through that, right?
Yeah.
There is a depth in there, you know, and you don't oftentimes have the, you know, your doula might not be in the OR with you, so you've lost your emotional support. So this is a part of the journey that you really kind of have to go through largely by yourself.
Yeah.
And isn't that the bravest thing, to go through that?
Yeah. Oh,
and
totally.
Come out on the other side? I think that we strip people of so much when we use words like failure, and because that, to me, I see people coming out on the other side of that, I'm like, dang, you are a brave person.
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah, I love that. I love that way of thinking about it. It's so true. I think also too, there's like, just, you know, whenever you've had something big, like if you've ever like skinned your knee, you're kind of like, oh, I don't know, I don't look at it. Like if I look at it, it'll be real.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's also a part of the looking, feeling, touching, is then that whole experience that you went through. This is a physical representation of it.
Absolutely.
And so it is, looking at it, touching it, is actually having to deal with what happened during that time.
But look at all the people who participate in like sports and like, you know, cyclers and snowboarders, and all these people who get like gnarly scars because of like the sport they've participated in, and afterwards it's like, yeah, check that out. That's from when I did blah 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 blah, and I fell down and I like my bone was popping through my arm, and that's like, damn, you're so tough, right? And it's like, then we look at this thing and we're like, oh, yeah, sorry. I'm like, no, dude, you're so tough. You're so tough.
So true. I love that that way of thinking about it. Yeah, no, it's a beautiful way of thinking about it. Yeah, it's important. I guess the take-home message is touch your body.
Touch your body.
However you want to.
Celebrate your body. Celebrate your body for making a new life, because it's not every day that everybody does that.
Yeah, right? It is pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. And surround yourself with people that are like, go you, go you.
Absolutely.
Right? I will give it to my husband. He's always been like, even when I was like postpartum after twins, like, what has happened to me? He's always like, I think you look great. And I'm like, what? And he's like, no. So it's like, it is really nice, even if you don't believe it, to hear it. Absolutely. Right? Even just to hear the words, even if I'm like, that you're so, like, that is not true. Like, let's move on with this. Like, I'm covered in whatever, like milk and blood and pee, and like I can't walk. Like, this is a mess. But to have someone be like, I still think you're so beautiful. Your hair looks great. And you're like, thank you. Yeah. My hair does actually, it really is like, it really has, you know, thickened up in a beautiful way. Anyways, the point is, it's nice to surround yourself with folks that are supportive.
Absolutely. I mean, to this very day, when I feel like anxious about something, like I feel like I can't do something, I'm feeling like ill-prepared, my partner will look at me and be like, what do you mean? You pushed out 3 babies. Like, he uses that as my hero moment. And to me, that is like so lovely. And it's so lovely to be reminded of that, because like, dude, that was my biggest power. Even if it didn't go exactly as I planned each and every time, I was in my power in those moments.
It's true.
So we want to set ourselves up with the folks around us who really celebrate that.
Like midwives.
Like your midwives. And also just like reframe some of this stuff yourself. If you're hearing some feedback from wherever, your socials, your provider, your friends, your family, about how if it's striking a chord of anything less than totally empowering, like, let's flip the script. Let's get some new influencers on the feed. Let's get a new provider. Let's draw some lines. I really like this one in terms of like, family is like, okay, you know, if it's not feeling super supportive for you to like talk in this way, like, maybe don't for now, right? Let's not have those kinds of conversations. And there's ways to have those kinds of conversations that I think maybe don't feel incendiary, but like are productive, right? Like, I'm actually really choosing to look at my pregnancy journey this way. And I've chosen to really reflect on my birth experience in this way. And so it's not really kind of like assigning blame for anybody for using different terms or talking about it in a different way, but really just inviting them to look at it with the same lens that you're looking at it with.
It's just like life, right? You choose to be around people that you're like down with and are have the same worldview.
Absolutely.
So like, why is it different in this place?
It's not.
It's not. Just choose the good people. All right, I think we can like wrap it. I don't know. How are you feeling? I could talk about this forever. I do have to make a small plug for a womb journey that's coming up. Where I just met with my friend Catherine. She is an incredible Ayurveda practitioner, and we were talking about just this topic of getting to know your body. And she really works with a lot of folks that have chosen to have their creative outlet from the womb not be a physical baby. They're like, it's a business, it's a project, it's whatever. And so we talked a lot about like what do we hold in our womb space, and what do we that's place of creativity. And so we're doing a whole 9-week journey on it. It's gonna be amazing.
I mean, the whole Taoist philosophy, that's like where the root of creativity is. It's like you don't need to, your womb is good for so much more than making a baby, right?
It actually, not to like go off on anything, but I guess we're here. You can always like whatever. But it drives me crazy when everyone talks about like your uterus and ovaries as just reproductive. Like we need to have a new word for it. I haven't thought of the right word for it yet. I'm like, it's part of the glandular / whatever system. I got to think of something else for the uterus, but I guess there's some, I don't know, hormonal stuff that happening there. But anyways, the point is like, we can't just be calling that system reproductive because it does more. It doesn't just reproduce. Like, that's part of why our society has gotten so sideways, is this view of people going through pregnancy, postpartum, and parenting as like just vessels for this child, as opposed to real human beings who are just going through a transformation, their own personal transformation. Same thing when you create something.
Absolutely.
And that's why it's so important for us to like change some of the way we talk, even just about our bodies. It's like, let's just not focus. It's how like everyone calls, their like parts their vagina, when like that's the inside and the most boring part. Like, who gives a shit about a vagina, right? Like, it's about the vulva is the interesting part, right? So it's like, it's because it's like, we're just like sinking into this idea of like, oh, this is just like, we're here to just like provide. It's like, no, we're here to create. Like, Absolutely. That's really amazing. And that's actually the seed of our strength. So anyways, join us on the womb journey. It's amazing. I'll figure out, I don't know how people sign up. I guess go to my Instagram. I'm really bad at this stuff. Thank God for Catherine Messa. She's incredible, and she's doing all of the sign up stuff. I think you sign up. I guess you could go to my Instagram.
I'll put a link.
Okay, great. Thanks. I like don't know how to do any of this. Thanks for you, Kelly, for being that person. All right. Do any last thoughts about bodies changing?
Embrace it. Love it. It's yours. There's no one else with a body like yours.
Oh, I like it. That's a good ending. Okay. See you next time. Bye.